So in this video I'm going to take you through how we usually conduct our lessons, and every child and every tutor would have a different preferred method. This is just one example that has been very effective, so feel free to adapt according to what you feel is best and what you feel the child will respond best to. So in this example we had a student that we were preparing for the 11 plus, in particular Latimer Upper School. So we went onto the website and retrieved some sample papers and we just worked through them. So we did some comprehension together, looked at how the student answered the questions, and then verified whether the questions or the answers were answered accordingly and properly by understanding the text ourselves. It doesn't come with mark scheme or answers, so it's something that you would have to do yourself. And then after working together, usually at the end of the lesson we'll kind of have a quick recap of what was done well. We usually write a bit of praise, edify the student, really encourage them to feel good about themselves, even if they have struggled for whatever reason, try to use words of encouragement, and then towards the end just some tips for improvement for the next time. And just continue working through the paper together. If it's maths that you also cover, then feel free to go through the maths aspects as well. So for the creative writing aspect, usually for homework we write down a clear homework and with some criteria as to what is expected from the homework, so that the child knows it can be assessed on. So usually things like vocabulary, the ending, things like that, and just give some examples. And then once the child has done that, try to make sure that they handwrite it, especially if they're a younger student, because their presentation and legibility of writing is very important. So ask them to send a photo of it, send it to you as a tutor, and then you upload it onto the whiteboard and then go through it together. Make sure you assess them based on presentation as well as vocabulary as well, and mark accordingly. Once again, try to be positive in the way that you approach any critique. We try to keep it positive. Of course, if there is any areas of weaknesses or things to improve on, we make a note of that as well. So we try to follow like a kind of praise, critique, praise kind of way when we're giving feedback to students. And then after, we try to give like a model answer, because sometimes I find that children, they work really well when they see an example, so something that they can mirror, and that way they can go away and adapt and try to replicate a similar style, as opposed to just giving feedback. It's good to give real life examples and something that they can really model and adapt. So for creative writing, usually we like to plan part 1, part 2 and part 3. And when it comes to story writing, a lot of children seem to really struggle with piecing a text together, forming like a beginning, middle and end. So what we usually do is we create like a word bank, a list of words that they may like to use. It's like a tool. So these words are something that they could incorporate in their writing. It doesn't mean that they have to cover every single word or any of for that matter, but at least it gives them something to start with, so that when they are writing, that they've got something to pull out rather than just thinking on top of their head. And same goes with a plan. It's important to kind of divide it into 3 parts and then kind of form it accordingly. So once again, for homework, when they've written it by hand, upload it onto the whiteboard and then mark it. And sometimes we like to narrow in on some of the parts of the work that was done by the student. And then we again write some positive things to begin with, and then some tips for improvement. Usually the ending of the story is where students really struggle with, and we try to consider the feelings, the impact the story should end on. Sometimes when stories are kind of neutral, it doesn't really compel the reader to read more. So the best endings are usually the ones that really arouse emotion. So if it's a horror story, to convey that feeling towards the end. If it's a sad story, maybe you want it to really arouse deep emotion, pain on the reader, things like that. So this is just something that you could advise a student to consider, maybe using certain words, certain metaphors, similes, things of that nature, to really convey that and express that to the best standard. And there are plenty of 11 plus past papers according to whatever score that they're applying for, whatever their goals are. So this is something you can access online. You can just type it into Google and it comes up. So plenty of resources that you can work with. when we're delivering like a maths lesson, we try to make it as logical as possible. You know, really break down how the question is, what's been asked of the question. As with the answers, you know, the method marks is very important. Really try to explain it in a systematic way, something that they can take away with them and apply it to other questions similar to these.